talk about network. So anyone in there feel comfortable when I say the word network? Good, then we're on the right spot. I mean, I see you guys, there's a lot of people in there that doesn't like it like me. And I don't know, it's always something that messes things up in the end. And I realized when I started this moving to the cloud back in like 2014 or 15, you know, when the Logic Apps Designer was horizontal. You remember that? Anyone? Yes, nice. So back in these days, I kind of ran away from on-prem to go to cloud to get away from network. I was so happy. I just want to get away from it. And now, 10 years later, I'm standing on stage in London talking about network. Wow, I didn't see that one coming. So my plan today is to bring you on a journey. I have one slide, and you're seeing it right now. The rest of this will be a journey with everyone in this room, and we will see where it comes. But the idea from my point is that we should have a better understanding of everything. Because usually when we talk about things like this, we just say, hey, it's Vnet. But how do you work with Vnet? What's a service endpoint? What's a private endpoint? More important, what's the difference between them? These things we'll look in today, and I will use my favorite tool. It's the whiteboard. So let's just start. Black box, okay, yes. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So when we talk about network, I will take an assumption. Have you ever heard of hub and spoke? Yep. So I'll take the assumption hub and spoke. There are more models out there, but I will do the hub and spoke. So the hub and spoke is usually like this. So we're just going to draw, this is going to be a Vnet. Inside of this Vnet, I will create 3 subnets. These subnets is going to have very different roles. So we will have one subnet, that will be the gateway, which is where we connect our on-premise. Now you're going to see my drawing skills as well. Look, it's a hub. That's what we're using one of our spaces for. The other one, we're going to put in a very friendly thing. It's the firewall. This one is the one that's going to mess. This is one of the things going to mess with us most in Azure. But the one that's going to mess with us even more is DNS. That's really going to fuck us up. That's for sure. So how do we connect the DNS into this? Because now we have a gateway, we have a firewall, we have a connection, we have an express route, hopefully, because that's going to give us speed. But we need to make sure that we do the DNS. So this is where it starts getting, yeah, if we do this good, it's going to be actually good. So let's just add one more VNet over here. And let's do it like this. And in this part, I'm going to add another resource because I like to do this PaaS way. So I will use only PaaS services all the way. You know that you can do everything with a VM, obviously, but we will use PaaS services. So in order to do that, we will add something called a private resolver. Have you heard of that before? No? No one? So a private resolver is like PaaS DNS service. So it's for Azure. And the idea about it is to bring in, so you can put your conditional forwarder. Let me just say that I'm not 100% right on the words here, but typically like this. So you put like a forwarder on your on-prem DNS services and put that to the private resolver, and that will solve all Azure part. There are 2 things about the private resolver. It says it's inbound IP. This is an IP, and then it has an outbound port as well. So the inbound is the one that we connect from our on-premise. So when they want to go to Azure, it's going to go to the private resolver and that endpoint, so that IP address. and the other one is that's going to go out, and that's going to end up by default to Azure DNS. So we're going out to public for Azure DNS. So this is how we do the basic setup of DNS settings in Azure. Obviously, there's more, right? Yeah, exactly. That's good. So when we have this base setting, so we have a firewall, we have a gateway, we have a start of DNS settings. We can start adding things. So a very used name is landing zones. I guess you've heard that. Yeah. So let's just add a landing zone. And now we're going to introduce more stuff. So let's add a landing zone over here. And what a landing zone usually is much more than just Vnet. But if we do a landing zone, we usually add a Vnet and we add a bunch of subnets. So I will add 4 subnets, I think it will be, into this. So these 4 subnets, and I will do a pairing. So these are called pairing. It's the same up here. Let's be consequential. So when we add this subnet, it's usually much more when you talk about landing zone, then it's also policies and subscriptions and yeah, a bunch more, but I will only focus on networking now. So when we do that, we usually get a Vnet with how many subnets that we need. And these usually comes like this. There's 2 things that's going to be added to this. So anyone have heard about something called route table? Yeah? How do you like that one? I feel you. So route table is a way of, forcing traffic going somewhere. So we will add the route table. Let's just, route table. These are actually really sneaky because they're actually a part up here as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and add them. They are always we should always have them at least. So that's one thing. When we do this, so this presentation we will go from very open to very locked down. That's the idea, because it's much more easier to do that, and hopefully you will gain the most knowledge about it, or what fits you. So route table usually comes with some rules. And in normal, if you go for a very locked down environment, we usually want the traffic to go to the firewall. That's what we want. So any traffic could float free in here. That's good. But as long as we want to go anywhere else, we want it to go to the firewall. So in order to do that, we use this route table and do a 000-0 to firewall. That's what we do. We put this and we put a route to the firewall. And there's one more thing that we need to think about, but that we need to know. It's that when we do this pairing, there's some stuff going on underneath. And then there's something called a system route table created. I know, this is messy, I know. I just want to tell you, because you should have heard it once. Hopefully you will never ever need to use it. But if there's someone talking about it then, because then there actually nice, system route table. You can't see it anywhere. It's just hidden underneath everything, but it's still there. And that is, if I want to go somewhere, that route table is pointing for the hub net. So whatever IP that is just, we're going to force that to the firewall. Because otherwise, if we want to go to the gateway, that traffic will just travel like that. And on the contrary, the same thing goes for this one. Then if we want to go, if traffic comes from on-prem, it could now just go over here, because that's the same kind of system route that is created. But that we also need to have like let's call this landing zone 1. Let's call it like that. So landing zone 1 to firewall. So whenever you want to come from on-premise and want to go down here, we force that traffic to the firewall. Those are sneaky. And you will never ever need to use them, I hope. But because otherwise traffic would be flowing. Without this rule, it will be flowing to internet by default. because that's default. But now we just want to lock it in. And then we come to the second thing that we need. And that's a NSG, a network security group. Have we tried that one? Yeah. Have you tried to actually configure something with it? Seems like you mostly use it as it is. Well, it's perfectly fine. What the network security group do is it's actually saying if I would connect a network security group, but if I'm not having a network security group, if I have a public IP in this network, it will actually be able to go in there. But if I add a network security group, I usually see this as a little bit like, Windows firewall when you're on a server. If you have been that old and doing that part, it's a little bit similar. So we can open ports and we can deny ports. So what it's saying is more like it actually exactly says from this subnet, how can my traffic flow in and out? What traffic can be flowing there and what can be going in? By default, if you just add a network security group by the box, it will allow all network traffic, which is fine for us at this point. But we can do much more. And I know that we have some in the audience that have been having security teams that have been locking things down. Because the NSG also determines how your resources in that VNet can communicate with each other. So we will add those NSG as well, just to make sure that we are safe. Perfect. So let's just go ahead and write it up as well. NSG, just grab it. Network security group. There we go. So we still haven't started developing anything yet, but this is what we need, or this is what you will get if you have a landing zone. So if we start adding things, so let's be a bit developed for now. Let's say that we want to add something in this network. We want to have some sort of data storage, we want to have some processing, and we want to make this secure. So let's start with using one of the buzzwords I was doing in the front. So Service Endpoint. So let's add a Cosmos DB, because that we can do with a Service Endpoint. And I'm going to use blue color here. So I'm going to draw blue around this. Hopefully you see blue. So what a Service Endpoint do is when I open this network to a Service Endpoint to Cosmos, I will then allow the possibility to connect this Cosmos DB to that network. So when I do this, I can then say, this Cosmos DB will then be connected over here. So I can connect from this. It will also add a bunch of rules that you cannot connect to it, but you can do exceptions. So you can do IP filters. So you could actually do an IP filter over here, for instance. Let's not add that. Let's add something else. So for Service Endpoint, we have added this. It's locked down. It's fine. Everything is fine. Now we need to start processing data from this. So let's add a logic app. And we have two options here. We can either use something called an app service environment, or we can do like Vnet injection. Anyone have any preferences? Vnet injection. Okay, we do Vnet injection. Thank you. I would prefer that one as well, so that's much more fun. So we add our logic app standard. And you all know it comes with a storage account, right? Storage. So we need to connect these two with a storage account. Now, in order to connect to my database, I need to do this Vnet injection part, which I've talked about. So I can then go ahead and say, hey, I want to connect into this Vnet. So this is good. When I then start building my workflow, so if I build a workflow, and I have somewhere over here like get data. This is where the fun starts. So, anyone have an idea when I do my DNS lookup where I will land? Sorry? Route table? Yes, that will be one thing. But where will it end up? So I'm doing my call. So I want to have the DNS of this. This is the first thing that's happening when we connect to a service, regardless. My DNS lookup will go way over here and way over here, and it will go to my private resolver. My private resolver doesn't have this, so it will go up to the Azure DNS, who will then go out to the internet and find the public IP. This is how traffic will flow. This is how we find our service. So good, now we have our service, we know where to go. We can then actually go ahead and connect to it, and our traffic will then go actually like this. Like we anticipated, right? The first one wasn't really there, right? It wasn't really what we thought about. But now we can get the data over there, so that's good. Cool. But we still go public for our storage account. This is still open. So let's start fixing that. Let's fix that. So let's introduce the next thing, which is private endpoint. Have you tried this one? Nice. And how do you feel about this service? Impossible. Did I hear that? Wow. Okay. A little bit more shares over here. So that's good. That's good. A little bit more. So the private endpoint is very much different, I would say. Because the private endpoint requires a bunch more stuff. But in reality, the private endpoint is, we'll use this Vnet over here, and a subnet. It's opening in your net to the storage account. So in order for this to work, we need to have actually create something called a private DNS zone. And you know what, even worse, is my storage account going to work right now with logic apps? Yes, it will, until we lock it down. But as soon as we lock it down, it's going to be really bad because we need a bunch of more services. So storage account contains of actually four different services that we need to use. So it's blob, table. I shouldn't have counted this one because, sorry? Table, queue, files, and storage. Yeah, good. So all of these we need to open. So instead of one connection, we open 4. Okay, back there. I'm just following you. It's on you. I can think about that. Okay, but still, in this case, we still need to do one more critical thing. We need to add, we need to add 4 of these as well. Let's just add all of these. Because we need to have a DNS in all of these. Private DNS. And just getting those records in there. There's also a bunch of ways of doing that. But let's start with just closing this down. To force traffic from the logic app to be there, we need to disable public access. What happens when we disable public access on a storage account? Sorry? Exactly. Logic app cannot see the storage account, or in this case, it actually can because it's VNet connected and we have the private DNS. But no one else can see it. If you're not on the VNet, you can't see it. So this is off the grid, this storage account. This is only inside your VNet. So Service Endpoint is actually public, still public. It's only accessible via the VNet, yes, but the database itself is public. The public IP is there. The storage account is well hidden underground. You have a question? If the storage is in the VNet, no, the storage is just deployed with private endpoints. That's the only thing it's deployed with. So technically, yes, it's in the VNet because private endpoint will give you traffic from the VNet in. So now it's there, but it's really important to understand the difference between being public, accessible, and not. So the service endpoint is actually public because we need the public access. We need the public IP. Meanwhile, the storage account is locked down. Okay, so this is now solved, and the DNS record, if we go for a logic app, will go like this. It will go there, and it will go that to all of these services, obviously, to all of these to find it. And then traffic will then go down here, and here, and here. Let's do that, but let's do it a little bit better. Then traffic will go there, and there, and there. So now the traffic flows right in the network, so that's good. But we still have the logic app open, so we still can connect. So when I, as a developer working over here, I can still connect to my logic app right now, which is good for us because it's easy. But what does security want? License. Yeah, they do want license, yes. But they also want to be locked down. So we need to add a private endpoint for this one as well. So let's add one more private endpoint down here to our logic app. And let's just go ahead and say public access disabled. Now things get a bit messy. So, anyone have tried this? You have? Done? Give me a shot. Come on. Deployment becomes a little bit tricky. How about watching the run history? That becomes very tricky as well, yes. So the problem is when we take this off the grid is we can't really access it unless we actually connect with a VPN in here or wherever we go. Now we need a VPN because this is not possible anymore. We can still manage it in the Azure portal. We can still go in the Azure portal. We can see it. We can like go and read everything, but we can't read run history. We can't do changes on it because we can't really push anything back. That's the first part. The other part is that our DevOps instance is out in the blue, right? So let's just add the DevOps instance. Wow, this got big. That's good. So usually before we could just use our DevOps instance and we could deploy, but that's not going to work anymore. So we need to add more stuff into this. Let's just go ahead and minimize that a little bit. Let's zoom in. So we need to start adding more networks into this mix. Let's add one big one. So we need to add this one, peering. And don't forget, we need a network security group, we need route tables, we need to have this in place in order for the data to flow correctly. I will just assume they are there now for the sake of it. But then I can then deploy a VM, or I prefer a scale set. Because that's more similar to the Azure deployment pipeline. So if I'm doing that, and then I install my agents on it, these can actually connect, and my deployment now can go through this and to the firewall, and can go down to my logic app. Through the private endpoint, sorry. Let's see. It will go down that way, to the private endpoint. That way. So now we can do this. We still have some more troubles, right? So developing is starting to be a little bit more problematic, or we need more things. We need either a jump server, or we need a VPN connection. We need to set up the DevOps instance. Anyone in here is doing that? The scale set and DevOps. Oh, we're gonna start at the front. There's also one. That's good. Cool. I mean, I don't know how you guys, but when I'm involved in this, it's usually a bumpy road, so to say, until this is actually working as we want it to be. It's all from getting the right CLIs installed and to having all the permissions over there, and then in the end, the scale set's gonna run up as they want them to be, and yeah, a bunch of things. But when they're finally there, it's nice. Just be prepared. It's a bit tricky. Cool. So now we have created like the most basic setup for this. I mean, if we want to add, I see that I have 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes on this. So let's do something fun. Let's say we want to secure this even more, or we want to do something else. So we usually want to add like an API management instance on top of this, probably. We want to bring in traffic. And then if I want to do that, I would do add a new pairing network over here. That's usually how it goes. I will draw this a bit. And we need at least 3 of them. Because what do we need? We need an API management instance, APIM. I'm doing internal mode now because we're doing this serious business. And then we do the gate application. Oh, not the gate, the application. App gateway. Then we do the app gateway. And then we take in there. And here comes a bunch of network security group rules. So if we have network security groups on this, we will need to have them there. And if you are interested in understanding one of these mechanisms, talk to Bill, he has to have a problem with network security group this week. Because the problem is APA management needs to be able to communicate in. And if you have a security team that is very, very rush, it's hard because we need to have the management plane over here. Not an issue, it's just that we need to have that in. You just need to be aware that they need to get in there. I think it's 3443. And if you're looking into that, you also should use something called a service tag, which means that you allow all APA management as a service to connect in there. So use that for your sake. And then we can allow traffic in to this again. And we can get traffic in. And now we'll build up this. Now we can use DevOps going in and out, and we have the network security groups up there. So if you want to have an even more critical thing, haven't I done enough, right? No, a little bit more, right? A little bit more. So what do we do then? Then we do the thing that Bill ended up having, is that we add a deny all to our network security group. So we need to explicitly open every single communication on every subnet. So if I do that, if I add a deny all on this subnet over here, then I need to open up everything from other subnets. I need to open up every communication inside, because the network security group is not only talking about the net between network subnets, it's also talking about our communication inside the subnet as well. So if you block everything, you will block everything, literally everything. So keep that in mind. Now I have 1 minute left. There's one thing I want to just add in top of this. We have forgotten one thing. What do we do with our app insight? I just want to poke this, and that's because there is a service that we should add in this particular place, according to Microsoft. So this is AMPLS. Then we can stop data ingestion and queries outside our network if you want to. So if you really want to tighten everything down, you can use that as well. And with that, I hope you have learned something new today. And if you want to talk about this or something else, just for fun, you know you can find me. I wear a suit, you will see me. And I wish you a continued great conference.